Hello, you're watching Newsx with me, Riya Dwivedi. Now let's start with the top story of the hour. In a fresh bid to take over Greenland, Trump has announced that European countries such as Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands and Finland will be charged a 10% tariff on every good shipped to the United States. European Union leaders have reacted sharply to US President Donald Trump's announcement, framing the move as economic coercion that risks damaging the foundations of the transatlantic partnership from Brussels to major European capitals. The dominant tone has been one of firm resistance combined with the call for unity. European Commission President Ursula has warned that such measures would undermine transatlantic relations and risk triggering a dangerous downward spiral, expressing full solidarity with Denmark and the people of Greenland. And she has emphasized the need for dialogue and diplomacy to resolve differences between NATO allies rather than escalating trade tensions. UK Prime Minister, on the other hand, Starmer called Trump's threat to impose tariffs on US allies completely wrong. He added that UK will pursue this issue directly with the US administration. On the other hand, France, Emmanuel Macron, when we're talking about the French counterpart, has echoed the EU president's sentiments and added that no amount of intimidation will persuade European nations to change their course on Greenland. The Swedish Prime Minister Ulf also warned that the EU would not be blackmailed by Trump. Moreover, Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas added that threats have no place among allies. Now, Donald Trump's threat appeared to have fired up the EU, which up to now has been loath to go down a confrontational path, with threatening to pause the ratification of the US trade deal next week. Now, joining me on the telecast is Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, former diplomat. Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, thank you so much for joining me on the telecast. Obviously, we've seen the developments that are taking place in Greenland. When we talk about this present scenario over there between the strained ties between NATO allies and America, what exactly do you think is the next course of action? Do you think that we've seen earlier Donald Trump has also floated the idea of a NATO exit as well if they don't comply with his demands of Greenland takeover? He has threatened tariffs as well, with 10% tariffs from February 1 and then 25% if they don't meet the demands. So what do you think about this?
Well, Trump is basically continuing with his pressured approach, that he will take forceful measures to do what he wants, including, use of tariffs, including exit from NATO, and including, this military option. And now the question is, how will EU respond? Because Denmark itself is pretty small and weak. Denmark cannot do very much. But can the EU countries come together? Can they take some strong action against the United States, which can deter, for instance, weakening the economic and trade links, or weakening, asking the US to remove the US bases, or something dramatic, something strong. Because unless Trump is resistant and defiant, like a drunken elephant, he will go on rampaging. So Trump needs to be stopped, and he can only be stopped if he sees that the other side can hit him back.
And Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, another question to you is that when we talk about the fact that France and other nations like Denmark as well as Germany, they continue to reject this idea and they have deployed their forces on the ground in Greenland as well. What does this mean in terms of geopolitics? What does this mean? Because what kind of precedent is being set where America decides that it's okay for them to float the idea of Greenland takeover, especially after Venezuela?
Yes, EU is basically trying to convey to Trump that, look, if you have concerns about the security and defense of Greenland, due to from China or from Russia, then we are here to take care of necessary measures. We can send our troops, we can strengthen our presence here, the U.S. can strengthen its presence. All that is doable. So basically, the EU is trying to say that we are willing to address your concerns, take care of your concerns. But if the presence of the EU forces is symbolic right now, so they are basically trying to find out some sort of a middle path. But one is not sure if Trump is in a mood to negotiate and if he's in a mood to back down.
And a small answer from you about what kind of impact would this now have on the bilateral trade then?
Yes, frankly, I am not quite sure about the EU. The EU has been, behaved more or less like a talk show. They talk big, but when it comes to taking action, either they are divided or they fail to take action, or their action is too weak. Or, so I'm not sure about the EU. They are talking big, but let's see. Let's see how much action they are willing to take.
All right, Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, thank you so much for joining me on the telecast. Now, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation